Republicans in the Washington State Legislature say Democrats are exaggerating the size of the projected 4-year operating budget shortfall to justify proposed tax increases. Here with more on this is the Center Square's Washington reporter, Carlene Johnson. Carlene, what is the discrepancy between the budget shortfall Republicans versus Democrats are seeing?
Yeah, the contrast is pretty great between Republicans who contend that the budget shortfall is 6.7 billion versus what majority Democrats have been saying, anywhere from 12 to potentially 16 billion. So it's a pretty dramatic difference. Republicans are saying basically if we hold the line where we are right now, not a bunch of new programs, we'll fund, public service and other government responsibilities, but don't add a bunch of new programs. They believe that the shortfall can actually be closed without any new taxes for this session. But that is not how Democrats see it. They say there's, some things that were promised in previous sessions, basically things they put on layaway, if you will, that now the bills coming due, and they want to follow through on those promises that were made in those pieces of legislation to expand early childhood care, other early learning programs. They see those as critical. Republicans are saying, well, we can't really expand right now because we just don't have the money as a state. So it's a pretty wide gap between what, Republicans see and what Democrats see as far as how big this shortfall really is.
Senator Peterson brought up raises given to employees in his line of work in comparison to raises for state workers that have been promised. Can you
Right.
elaborate?
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. So, Majority Senate Leader Jamie Peterson of Seattle, um, I asked him during the Democrats' media availability, I said, so what about these raises that are going to state employees? Because that's a huge chunk of the increase in the budget, and why Democrats say it's closer to 12 or larger, right? The $4 billion is the increase for state employees that was negotiated collective bargaining behind closed doors with former Governor Jay Inslee. So I asked him, I said, well, given the budget shortfall at this point in time, why can't those state employees maybe hold off on getting raises this year, or maybe smaller raises this year? We said, and my suggestion to him was, well, that's what the private sector is doing, right? People don't, or companies don't have as much to give employees. Like Microsoft just announced a bunch more layoffs in the last week. So why can't the public sector operate like the private sector does when it comes to your budget constraints? And he said, no, the private sector is not holding back. In fact, he says, 3,000 employees in the company that he works with and does HR and some legal consulting for, which is McKinstry Construction. He said, we just gave everybody 4% raises, and some of the union members in our company are getting up to 10% raises. And that is necessary to attract and retain the best employees. So that was his comparison. The interesting thing that I was told after that conversation by a conservative talk show host here in the Seattle area, Ari Hoffman, dug up some public records, and Senator Peterson's company, McKinstry, because of some of its contracting, receives about $25 million in taxpayer money. So I've attempted to go back to Senator Peterson and say, okay, are you giving your employees raises a little bit on the backs of taxpayers? That was the suggestion. So I have not received a response back on that inquiry as yet.
Democrats are suggesting new revenue, which would likely come from taxes, will be needed to fund promised programs. But will the new governor go along with that?
That's going to be the big question, right? So on Thursday, Governor Bob Ferguson came out with his roughly $4 billion in cuts from state agencies, which is a bit interesting, right? It's the $4 billion in raises that state employers are getting. And yet he went to state agencies and said, okay, as soon as he took office, is that I want you to find me efficiencies. I want you to find places where you can cut some of the fat because of the budget situation. And on Thursday, he announced that those state agencies were able to trim about $4 billion out of their budgets. It's the exact same figure as the raises are costing. So that's going to be interesting as that plays out. And we expect to get some further comments from majority Republicans on that. But you're right. Democrats are looking at any number of tax increase proposals, from higher estate or death taxes to B&O tax increases to lifting levy lids, which would increase property taxes. And they're saying all of those things are going to be needed. Now, final budget negotiations, have yet to happen. So we don't know which of those bills are going to get, passed off of both the Senate and the House full floor votes. But it's going to be an ongoing crazy debate. How much do we hold the line and not expand programs? How many taxes will Democrats seek to be able to expand the programs? That's going to be the fight. We're at week 7 of the session, which goes until April the 27th. So there's still plenty of time for heated debate on all of this, and we're going to be watching it really closely.
Well, Carlene, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.